Welcome to Unlearn, the podcast that redefines the playbook for modern business leaders.
In a world where yesterday's truths are today's challenges, every episode brings you bold ideas and visionary strategies to thrive in a world where the only constant is change.
Let's dive in. Welcome to Unlearn. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unlearn podcast. I'm particularly not being the hype man today because I want to come across very educated, and a proper, legit host, because we're trying to up-level this podcast. And really, up-leveling always happens by the quality of guests that we get. So we're fortunate to have Richard Ezekiel with us today. Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then let's dive into what I think is going to be a pretty amazing session.
Awesome. Hey, well, Kelly, Asher, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about the book, a bit about my background, and just really keep this pretty informal and talk about the topic of partnerships. It's a pretty mystic art. I think there's a lot of instinct, a lot of intuition in this field, and I really had the motivation to create some structure around it, and I call it infrastructure because we want to really kind of build this as a discipline, as a community. And, I think the ethos of what you guys are doing is super special. I'm a party of one here, and I'm trying to get a message out. And I appreciate your guys' time to talk a little about this and kind of riff on some of the concepts and dig deep if you like, or, have some follow-ons. But I'm a passionate partnerships guy. I've been doing it for a few decades and learn tons from people around me. So I wanted to really put it into something that could get the word out and start more conversations just like this.
So, super. Yeah. And as always, for our guests, for our audience, our guests are never prepared, so we don't do this massive pre-production and then this massive pro-production. Richard and I connected over LinkedIn, and he was like, "Hey, I'm trying to put this book out." And I'm like, "Okay, this is interesting. You should definitely come and chat with us about it." But Richard, just for you, this is a project that Kelly and I started. Maybe a couple of years ago now. But my company, Partnership Leaders, we created the platform for modern partnership professionals to build their careers. And in that journey of the last 6 years, we were fortunate enough for the industry to elevate a couple of partnership leaders to this role called the Chief Partner Officer, which was the first time we said, okay, there's this role called Channel Chief, but that seems like a very celebratory type of a title. And but we need somebody who actually has a seat at the table, but also has the authority to make decisions and create a unit out of this function. And so when that CPO role came out, we co-opted into it, and then we created a path for ICs and partnerships to go all the way to Chief Partner Officer. And then we've created events, we have research, we have it's basically, if there was the partnerships company, that would be us. And then Kelly's been one of our original members, and she and I are friends. And so we said, okay, why don't we create a podcast where we invite senior partnership leaders and people that have experience, or people that are business leaders who have experience running partnership programs or supporting partnership programs to join us and just talk about the new ways to go to market, or even the playbooks to build modern businesses. So that's essentially the goal of this whole session.
Exciting. That's a great day job. I think I love to be in the trenches. I love to be operational on building, and so but there's also an aspect of how do we advise and grow and have a collective kind of wisdom and body of work, and I think that's pretty special. So I'm happy to get more into that.
Yeah,
the gravity of that.
Tell us about your journey, because I think you've been in startups and large enterprises.
Yeah, sure.
You're at Amazon today, but I think this is the OG Amazon, not AWS. We're all familiar with. So walk us through your journey.
Oh my God! Well, keep me concise on this, because it's been a long journey, but it's been an exciting one, because I think the kind of very cool thing in the world of technology is everything's changing around us too. So it kind of keeps us on our toes around the types of companies, the kind of ways to go to market, like you were saying, the kind of products, the kind of use cases, the adoption of technology. But I think the constant thread and theme has been around working together and collaborating. For me, starting out, actually, I'm paying homage today to my first employer, at least in the technology space, Wired magazine.
Okay.
Um, I was an intern at Wired back in when it was starting out in San Francisco, and it was in the kind of the early days of the internet, the commercialization of the internet. And so it was able to really introduce me to more of it was in the where music artists and others were using this as a medium versus kind of like enterprises moving to the cloud. That kind of happened another decade later. But for me, it was starting out and meeting a great group of folks at Wired and Hotwired, which was really a breakthrough sort of online presence for the magazine. I met three folks that we had a common interest of playing music. And at that point, I was an aspiring musician to play in a rock band. We started a band in San Francisco. Um, Over the course of a few months, our studio, we would have people come and visit us at the studio, hang out and listen to the music. We weren't really that good. We did get a few gigs, which was pretty fun. But we started to have other we kind of knew the community of what was happening with other bands in San Francisco. We had some technologists that were part of this band that worked at Wired, and we had an idea as actually could we bring bands into our studio and try to use streaming audio technology. It was actually a new concept. And so we worked with Real Audio. We had every Saturday night, we did something called 9up.com. This was one of the first online streaming studios for live music. And we'd have folks visit. We had a global audience. We had folks visit from a lot of different places when they came to San Francisco to see this. We also did early stages of video. There was no video streaming at that time. It was all pushing JPEGs out to the internet. And so this was a kind of a passion project, but it actually was actually a very breakthrough piece of technology that now we take this pretty much for granted. So along my journey, it's always been about passion. It's always been about finding what I love to do. I can't really work on something that I'm not passionate about. And that's usually around connecting with others. And I think for this one with 9up, it kind of set the stage. I had been in Silicon Valley for many years, but not really in technology. But then I moved back down to the South Bay, and I was part of Netscape Communications in the early days. That was the browser war years. And my role was actually a web developer. I was coding websites, doing, I would say, nowadays would be very elementary JavaScript and DHTML type of coding, not a back-end coder. And I went into Netscape, and I was doing product partnerships, working with companies that are no longer with us, the dot-com era, but also building experiences on something called Net Center. You push the Netscape button in a browser, and you'd go to like a portal like Yahoo. That was my first introduction to working really with partners. One of my partners actually was Amazon, a bookseller out of Bellevue at the time, and so it gave me really another outlet to communicate and build new things that we wouldn't really build on our own. And so Netscape, I moved. I'll kind of do the short form. I was able to kind of follow a few folks to some other companies because we all kind of had a small cohort of folks that were at Netscape. Moved to Yahoo. Was at Yahoo in the kind of early 2000s. And had some pretty breakthrough, I would say, technology in areas there around connected TV, connecting devices. Then into Netflix, where I was part of the early team that was doing streaming on connected devices there. Moved into a startup, into Andreessen Horowitz later after that, where I worked with a very sort of broad set of new companies and worked with some amazing leaders. And then I, had a bit of soul searching during COVID, and I thought, how could I bring my passion to massive scale? And there was a couple companies, a few companies that I thought of, and I was lucky to find an amazing team at Amazon and a great leader to work for. And we decided to partner, and now we're kind of doing things that we believe are very transformative with other companies. So it's a bit of the short form. I kind of sped up at the end,
Yeah, that's
but
good.
it'll give you a little more of a picture of who I am, and I'd love to, if you want to dig into any of those areas.
Well, it'll,
I'm
it'll just be
happy.
good for our audience to get a sense of like what your focus today is before we
Yeah.
get in the book.
Yeah, sure. My focus, and I won't dig into too much what I do at Amazon,
Yeah,
um, but my goal is to, the common thread throughout, I would say, my last 2 decades, being in Silicon Valley and building partnerships, with companies, has really been to look at how we can accelerate what we do in either in speed, in new products, new technology. But at the end of the day, it's how do you bring new products and services to customers faster in a better and more convenient way. A lot of folks will say, we want to build 1+1 or win-win partnerships. For me, I really see it as, I talk about it in the book a little bit, sort of the win-win-win, the partnership T concept. And this was a concept that I just been using for many years. It's where, you need to have really a kind of equal balance between two kind of and sort of joint incentives between two companies. But at the end of the day, you're working for the end customer.
yeah,
And how do you really find that common value creation
yeah,
that you can do as two companies? If that's co-development, co-creation, more complementary capabilities from talent to skill set, you name it. I mean, there's a very long list of ways to build a successful partnership. There's a very long list of ways to build a unsuccessful partnership.
Maybe an even
And
longer list on that second one.
and so so yeah, it's a there's a lot to dig in there, but for me, I've kept that common thread, and I think with new technologies on the horizon, especially with the rise of I think that gives us another a set of transformation that is almost the next big wave with beyond internet and mobile and cloud.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm so sorry. The reason why I ask is because most of the audience that we have is very focused on B2B partnerships.
Yeah.
And then we all know and understand how the AWS partnerships teams work, but
Hmm.
very few people understand that like there's an Amazon.com BD team as well. And I went to a conference where I met someone who was working on Amazon spatial audio, and it was very fascinating, like just the type of work that he was doing. So for our audience, like it's I mean, for some folks, it'll be actually new to understand that there's a whole partnerships team that actually sits under Amazon.com, which is like the larger, or maybe the mothership of the mothership that we all think is, which is AWS. Uh, and so you are actually part of that group, right? So that people don't get confused on like where your focus is. That's where I was going.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really dig into too much
Yeah, yeah,
on the Amazon front, but we have leaders across every organization at Amazon, and I have the pleasure of working with a lot of different, talented folks across all the different sort of surface
yeah,
area of Amazon.
yeah,
So it's a very special role, and I think yeah, I mean, it's really, there's really no ceiling.
yeah.
That's a
And
pretty
was
special.
there a
Yeah.
point in your journey where you were like, hey, I've kind of done this like SMB mid market thing. I'm just going to go work at large enterprise. Was that part of your decision making framework?
I think it really depends on the company. I would say um, so many different flavors of partnerships have kind of come and gone in my career, from doing very hardcore B2B or B2B to C type of partnerships at
Yeah,
Netflix. I would say that was more, how do I work with the consumer electronics industry to bring Netflix to living rooms, and so always finding sort of the way in which to accelerate product and go to market plans.
yeah,
Um, and so, with a company that is very, you would say, a consumer company like Netflix, there's quite a bit of B2B work that's happening behind the scenes
yeah,
with the ecosystem of how consumer electronics get built. From the SoC to the ODMs, to the OEMs, and the sales channels. So for me, I tend to really geek out and dissect vertical markets and ecosystems,
Yep.
and understand the supply chains of a partner, so you can inject in sort of the right place and time to create sort of one-to-many value, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And happy to go. These concepts are
Hey, no,
in the book,
Well,
which are quite
I
unique.
would love to hear the structure of the book. Like, it sounds like what
Yeah.
motivated you to write
right,
this is...
right before we go there. I mean, so this is really important because
Asher, you're not being a good co-host.
I know. I know.
This is good. I want to see the banter actually on this podcast.
I'm trying to land
Does this partnership work? I mean, what are the
Exactly.
Sometimes it works.
Maybe that's an offline
there's
conversation
in the book where there's conflict, like resolution tips. Like we're gonna read that. No, the reason I'm actually saying this because I've spent a number of calls with partnership leaders, and they're all trying to figure out like, hey, where do I go for my next thing? Those are like I would say 70% of the calls that I get these days, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm kind of double clicking on all this stuff is like because I was speaking with one leader this week, and I'm like, look, you are such an amazing person that you've done all of these other things. Why don't you like pick a industry that you really love, and then the sky's the limit? And like, here's an example. I know for a fact because I'm a United Airlines customer, right? Like they are working on all kinds of things in their app. Like all of that is partnership work. Why don't you just like pick something like that and go pitch this idea to you like United Airlines, right? And a regular, or I would say, today, most B2B partner professionals would never think about that side, right? But there's like such a big opportunity to take the partnership skill sets that they've built and just take it into another industry. At our conference, we actually heard from JP Morgan Payments, and that was another big thing. We were like, well, if a bank is moving into modernizing their partner program, like how many partner professionals in the room would actually even think about stuff like that, right? And so that's why I was kind of excited to chat with you anyways, but like, and I'm double clicking on this point because there are lots of different applications of the skill set that we've all learned, and that we'll actually talk about in the book, because I think the book does an amazing job of just not just sharing the theory, but also giving practical
That's right,
guidelines, and it actually makes it actionable. Actually, after Kelly will say that.
Asher, now you interrupted to summarize Richard's book when he was going to summarize his book.
I'm okay with that. I'd rather hear how you're interpreting the value of the book.
Well,
that's
that's a dangerous game,
as the key up to Kelly's question.
Let's go.
There was a book by this person called Bernie Brenner called The Sumo Advantage, which I would say like every partner professional who wants to be at the top of their game should read. And then after that, I think your book actually does an amazing job of just outlining things that are happening right now. Because like Bernie was like CEO of TrueCar, and that was also a very ecosystem play because you had to understand the supply chain, you had to understand all these different things and look for this like David versus Goliath story situations that actually go pitch, right? And so after I finished kind of like skimming through your book, I won't say that I read it because that would not be true. To Kelly's point, your book does an amazing job of just like laying out like, hey, here's what's happening and here's how you now go at it. And then you've got some amazing stories in there. So let's unpack. Let's go to Kelly now. Sorry.
No, great. No, I mean, but this is the kind of conversation that I was hoping to have. Meaning this type of conversation across all the other tables in meetings around the planet, because it's as I kind of started out, is there's, we're sort of repeating the foundation, and it's how do we create and architect a very sort of like bring together that all of those learnings.
Yeah.
But Kelly, why don't you jump in, and then we can get a little more specific on a few things too. I'd be happy to.
No, I was just going back to the beginning to essentially kind of get your perspective as the author, what you were thinking when you set out to write this book,
Right.
And then kind of where you landed structurally as like, is it part memoir? It sounds like there's a lot of frameworks that partner professionals can action.
Yeah.
Assume it's good for any business leader, right?
Yeah. Well, Kelly, I think I didn't aspire to be an author, there's many folks that, that do write books that were trained writers. And for me, I've been just on the job, in creating what I like to call sort of tribal knowledge around this. And it happens in every company. It happens with every partnership professional of tribal knowledge of, I would like to say, scavenger hunts of doing partnerships. Um, so for me, just the variety of companies, the variety of of leadership styles, the variety of cultures, and also the variety of technology creates the ability to storytell in ways that can give different perspectives that then you can just triangulate and look for commonalities and frameworks. That's pretty cool, right? I think that's what you all look for probably through your members, right? You want to create that collective wisdom. And I said, I've got it. It's my duty. I got to get this down onto paper. I mean, the real spark, though, Kelly, for me was about 6 years ago. I had mentored a group of interns at Andreessen Horowitz, super well educated Ivy League MBAs, and they were put into some roles around growth roles for business development partnerships. And it's not really a discipline taught in academia
Yep.
today. And so there's not really the frameworks, there's not really the storytelling that's happening. I found myself in a position and opportunity where, like, I'm teaching. I'm kind of showing and telling, and by doing it, and I started to capture, some of these concepts that I think over time, it was more just intuition, and um, so I had tried to find, a company or set of companies that would help me write the book because I really didn't know how to structure this. And so started writing 300, 500 words a day, for a couple of years. And so that then turned into a body of work that was super messy, and it was not a coherent read, by far. And but it gave me a great outlet. Especially also we're all working from home during that time. And so it gave me a way to share my story, and we all have amazing stories to tell, and then start to reflect. And one thing I really wanted to do in the book too is to really share more of the learnings and that readers could adapt what the stories that I've shared, but also not just my personal stories in my own career, but other reference points that we see as what great looks like in partnerships. So I also call out some industry known partnerships and dissect those, and also ones that weren't, I would say, the pitfalls or the ones that we think maybe didn't hit the mark. And so that I think from there, I kind of took on the challenge to say, could I put this together for the earlier version of me, the earlier version of, some of the folks I was coaching and mentoring. And I set out to accomplish that. And I'm happy to say that in the last couple of months, I've been able to really wrap it up into something that's coherent in a sequential way that hopefully you could use as a reference. And and then near the tail end of this today, I'd love to give you a little sneak peek of something that's going to be coming along with the book launch. I think it's pretty exciting.
Cool, a giveaway. We love
Yeah.
it. Well, so the book kind of starts off with like, look, there's 100 million startups, right? And then is it like 80% survive by year two and 56%? Like walk us through the setup, and then I'd love to hear the Costco story because I think people would love and enjoy
sure.
the Costco story. Yeah.
This is like, oh my gosh, I think some of my experience working in the startup world and then moving into venture capital,
Yeah.
being able to see really a structured way to get to an idea, meaning, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the solution? What's the way in which we can implement that solution and really change the problem into an opportunity? And so I think I've just been kind of wired that way
Yeah.
in terms of like creating even the structure of the book. How do we start with what the problem is today in
Yeah.
business? And I think that's where you're picking up more on,
Yeah.
where I call it a coin flip, meaning in terms of, a startup success and failure. And I really break down the core attributes of of what we can look at as historical ways that startups have been successful. But at the same time, this is a scary stat for your audience and for you both, is that 70% of partnerships fail after 2 years. It's a big number. The question is, what are those 30% doing? Now, this is PwC, this is McKinsey. These are not like stats I'm making up on my own partnerships, right? You could go ahead and chat GPT this one if you want. Yeah, no, but this is the percentage. It ranges from 60 to 70. I would say in my career, probably earlier it would be like 100%. They're kind of dying on a vine. There's so much PR and energy in the first year of a partnership. We got it done. It's a bit like kind of a sales, closing the sales deal. But it's more about how do you maintain and grow this into something almost like what I call a virtual company between two corporations. And so, but I think that the part about the stats, this is the part that's even more staggering, right? So you got 70% of partnerships that fail after a couple of years.
Yep.
It's not really about how do you become part of the 30, but how do you flip it? That 70% are successful after 2 years. And this is the thing, right? And you can, again, this is, research and stats you can look up, but it's a bit in the book, and it'll be outdated pretty soon in terms of some of those stats. But what holds true is the level of investment that companies have in partnerships. This is in the trillions of dollars that are being invested. Just do that very simple math. 2 trillion plus is invested in partnerships. 70% fail. I mean, who's doing the math? Like, this is not a rational, situation of doing a partnership. So I try to go back then to the root cause. Why are these partnerships failing? Why are they running out of steam? Right? Because there's a general, not just the practices that folks can do and the methodologies, right? But it's really the ideas. It comes down to the idea you're creating. And I talk a lot about that in the book, is creating a true killer idea. Meaning when you add two companies, what can you really create that can be sustainable, defensible, and add incredible value? I mean, that's like where I get super excited. And I think a lot of folks in partnerships do too, right? I mean,
yeah. And
yeah,
Kelly,
so there's some more stats there, Asher. But
Well,
in the book, you kind of get the concept, though. It's like I was like, oh my God, like I think there's a bigger purpose here. It's not about just doing partnerships. It's about shifting the way in which this growth mechanism is done in a predictable, repeatable, and scalable way. And I think we're onto something. It's just we got to, as a community, we've really got to build this body of work to then build the next stage of how to do this in, I think, pretty accelerate innovation more globally. I think that's the really exciting thing about it.
Richard uses the word operational rigor, I think, a few times, which is
really?
Operational
rigor is Asher's favorite word. I also like that word.
It's definitely great. The word rigor.
That's cool. Okay.
We're both big fans of operations and data.
Yeah, totally.
But Richard, if I'm understanding correctly, is like the core diagnosis of the situation that when people are going to formulate, would you refer to it as a virtual company? Because I actually liked that metaphor.
That's one of the concepts.
I like that metaphor. But they're not putting enough essential thought, strategy, and structure, and almost like JVP into that, and so they're crumble within time. Like, is this the core problem?
Kelly, it's a deep topic. I mean,
we need guidance, Richard.
No. But this is where, like,
Kelly, that's what Richard's saying?
No. But it's like, I think this is the part I've tried to pull from my own experience and also what I can gather publicly or from. But this is where the sort of the community can really help to create and define sort of what are success factors and how do you actually do it. I mean, from experience and just from seeing what's out there, the ones that really stand the test of time is where you're actually architecting not just the deal, you're architecting the partnership. And what I mean by the partnership in that context is really the operational rigor and framework to sustain two companies to innovate together over time and grow the partnership, not just on the actual scope of from day one. And those are the parts like I really get deep into more the DNA of company cultures and creating almost the DNA of this virtual company. Because when two companies come together, I mean, you got oil and water, or you got, you're singing from the same sheet of music, and you kind of got very wide spectrum of how companies operate. Sometimes folks are looking for the ability to bring different sort of inject new types of cultural attributes into their company, but sometimes you kind of operate the same. So there's no flavors that are the same, but the whole point is, and it gets into the book a little more detail, is really unpacking and understanding about how not just your company operates and how you make decisions, because you got to be able to really represent that and explain it and operate in that way. But understand from the other side of the equation is how does your prospects company operate? From not just what their vision and strategy and mission and objectives are, but how do they make decisions? What are the internal politics of the company around? Are there existing projects that they're already working on versus what you're an idea you're bringing to the table?
Yeah.
So we all have been in the trenches doing this. But I have some theories in the book that I believe they're beyond theoretical and actually have been kind of tried and tested and have some success. But again, Kelly, it's the virtual organization is, I think, a pretty cool concept. And I think there's lightweight ways and there's like longer term, heavier weight ways based on kind of the surface area of the partnership idea, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and I
Yeah.
agree. The reason I like that metaphor too, because I think it forces someone into the disposition to think through those very questions that you're identifying, right? Because I will say, I think brand and cultural alignment is something where when you try to have strategic partnerships, it can definitely fall down. And because those factors are a little bit soft, they're
Yeah.
often overlooked for like the hardcore financial forecasting.
Yeah.
But it's dependent on the execution, right? And execution brings in the culture of the companies.
Well, on that part, there's a section of the book where Richard's like, yeah, you'll hear these alliances, folks. They're a thing of the past. I'm like, yes, totally. It's all partnerships. Yeah. There's a little bit of a nomenclature thing going on in the marketplace where
Sure.
some people are like, we're channel, we're alliances, we're partnerships. Like, it's
That's
all
right,
partnerships,
Asher.
and I don't know how close you follow, or you're following just partner technology, the technology companies that are being created to help us all with like modern tooling. But there was,
Yeah.
over the last couple of years, there's been a number of like category creation campaigns that have gone out, and we've just stuck to like just calling it partnerships, and now it's like what was old is new again, and it seems like the industry is just like landing on like there's partnerships, and then there can be like cloud partnerships, they can be like the technology partnerships, they can be like go to market partnerships, but
100%.
it's all just one big house that all of this stuff fits under.
Asher, I mean, this is some of the challenge, right, in our field, and is the terminology.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of I try to tackle that also a bit to have some grounding of my point of view, and some of the ways in which I think we can bring partnerships in this discipline into some more structure that our brothers and sisters and cousins and product and marketing and sales have really created discipline over the last few decades. Some newer than others of entrepreneurship and data science, but the next one is really partnerships to bring into, I believe, into academia. That's maybe another podcast.
Yeah, totally.
But I could love to share some feedback on that, because it kind of fits with the vision of really why CoElevate exists today. Yeah,
It makes sense.
it's a great
Have you
topic.
talked to people in the academy? Like, is there not interest yet? I know there's some articles here and there, of course, and I know there's some professors touching it. But to your point, it's not a robust curriculum in the way these others are. Have you heard anything about that changing?
Well, maybe it is a great follow-on conversation about it. I think in terms of why new disciplines get introduced in academia is sometimes really based on job market opportunities, career paths, curriculum of having a diverse set of skill sets to create a accredited minor or major within a university. Um, so there's definitely some things in the works that, maybe, yeah, as I said, like at some point, I'd love to share more about some of the things that I'm looking to pilot with, some folks that are in universities and institutions, because at this point, this is the only way that we're going to be able to really triangulate on a younger generation, being able to have the tool set, the toolkit, and the mindset to really bring partnerships in from day one. And the book is an attempt to bring this to a audience, but we're not going to be able to solve that through a single book. There needs to be other ways to do it through advising, through what you do as a group. And there's some other ideas I think
Yeah.
in academia that I think we got to go nail.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, Richard, at least from your LinkedIn, it shows you took the, and I didn't actually know that Wharton actually has the strategic partnerships and ecosystems.
Yeah.
Is it like a certificate? I'm assuming it's a certificate
Yeah.
program, which is right in the backyard of where Kelly lives. So, Kelly,
Esther?
Yeah.
you're
No,
connected with this
fantastic
group.
area,
Yeah.
amazing campus. I love the faculty. There's, Harbor Singh there he's one of the few professors that I've met that has gone deep on the topic of growth through partnerships, and had a chance to work with him. Um, going to that later in my career, um, where you've already formed some of your own ways you do it,
Yeah.
it's really hard to change sometimes. But you hear the different perspectives, and but I think there's a recognition already and around the way companies grow today,
Yeah.
and it just hasn't been codified. And it's up to us. It's up to professors. It's up to universities to be able to provide the tools that kind of the next generation needs, especially when many of the things that we're doing today in partnerships or even in businesses are going to be made more efficient through AI. So being able to really kind of hone these soft skills, hone the ability to engage with others, will be actually a differentiator. And so there's a lot more there, but I'm surprised there's no university on the planet that currently offers
Yeah.
a major in this. I mean, there's more 4 to 6 week programs, and they're usually later in your career, like an executive
Yeah, they're
education.
part of exec. They're not part of the.
Yeah.
You're right. They're not part of foundational learning. Well, what's interesting is that I definitely did not get to this part of the book, but I'm sure you cover it. Is most of the CFOs that I've spoken with this year are all like, "Hey, we are drinking the Kool-Aid of partnerships. Like, you don't have to tell us that. Like, help us figure out how to make it predictable." And they almost always quote Aaron Ross's predictable revenue book, where the model that he, I believe, perfected at Salesforce around having BDRs that align to a sales rep that then generates pipeline. They were like, is there a world like that exists where you can just, help us understand how we can get predictable revenue through partnerships? We understand the moat effects and all this other stuff that you have, but can you focus, can you guys spend some time researching this piece, or are we there in industry maturity to even be able to have that conversation a little bit more seriously?
It's a very good question. I think in terms of, you almost have to break it down into sort of different vertical markets. It depends on the idea too, and it depends on the two companies of what that's a breakdown of the key performance indicators, the KPIs of what these two companies are trying to achieve. So the metric, for success may be different. It may be revenue. It may be building audience. It may be, launching a product faster. So it's really, what are the quantitative metrics at the end of the day that you're trying to achieve together, and that is the essence of tracking success of a partnership, but being able to create a pathway I call the runway as part of the first kind of section of this book, is really being that advocate internally in your company to create sort of this as a discipline. And so sales has a fairly more predictable way to do that today, with quotas, and you have incentives to basically drive against your quota and your sales. It's not super easy, obviously. It's very difficult. And there's aspects that are similar, but we can easily get kind of tied into the revenue piece, which sometimes we do, which is okay. But there's a co-creation piece too. So, but Asher, to answer your question, without going into like a specific idea, it can be difficult to come up with a singular way that a partnership can be successful through a quantitative metric, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my whole thing was like, we need to spend more time with CFOs, and just help them understand like all the other aspects of partnerships that can.
But Asher, you could tie it all back to revenue too. I mean, there's aspects too of like revenue, meaning the whole P&L of cost savings, of time to market. But the way in which you're driving that with the actual partner, it doesn't, you kind of don't start at the P&L, conversation, but it should tie back ultimately to a business case, and a business case that has financial rigor, behind it, and how the partnership will actually kind of shift of the, P&L today versus the P&L tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so
let's
I have a question for you, Richard. So, in the stories and case studies you shared so far, you're talking about it in a very one-to-one manner. So, like us two companies coming together and figuring out our structure. Does your book also go into kind of one-to-many? Because when you think about it from the perspective of platform companies, while yes, technically they have one-to-one relationship potentially with all of their long-tail partners, typically the way they're looking at it is more in an aggregation of one to many, and how we can be successful at scale. Is that something your book goes into as well, or is that kind of a separate concept?
Second book.
No,
or the part Asher didn't read.
That's true.
Kelly, awesome topic. A key way to scale companies, and is finding commonality, obviously, in with an industry or a category within an industry. And the power of platform partnerships is really how you can get economies of scale for the efforts. And it's not just creating a program. I kind of go into some depth on platform partnerships in the book, and then talk more about sort of the crawl, walk, run, building a platform or a program, a partnership program. And so that it was, if it was Netflix or if it was Yahoo, many other folks in your community have built programs before, but usually day one, you don't go create a program. And then there's, I do some comparison against developer programs, which are different, but there are some similarities and attributes that can be the same. So I think in, one-to-one, one-to-many, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, even, trilateral type of arrangements. I kind of cover a few flavors, in the book. Yeah. It's quite cool. I love that topic too, because you got to really go deep on research and understanding what I like to call the supply chain, or, sort of the vertical integrated market. So, because you really got to know that before you do something kind of more surface level. Yeah.
Tell us about. Okay, I know we're going to come to a close, and we'd love to have you back later on. But
sure,
to leave our audience with some like a mental model for the book, like do you want to walk us through like just the sections of the book so people understand like, hey, here's what's overall covered, and then that kind of becomes a teaser to actually buying the book and reading it,
Well, let me see if I can remind myself.
Totally.
Yeah, I could read my own book. No,
you are allowed in this podcast.
You blacked it out now. It was so hard
that's
to
right.
do.
So let me reference the book here. No, but it is very funny. Like, I joke about referencing the book, but it was also a place for me to put these ideas, so I can go back
to.
I'm serious. I mean,
I believe you.
We can only all the information and insights. Well, information can drive insights, but the ability for us to use our own insights, it's pretty tough to go back into the data bank, right? And so this for me is a bit of the data bank, but also, the insights to help, a lot of us to collect our thoughts. But yeah, in terms of the structure, I urge the team or the community to check it out. There's really a methodology that I propose in the book, and breaking down sort of the success factors and and what I've seen work out there. I think a lot of the groundwork that's happening, in that we do in partnerships today is quite a bit of, building reference material, understanding companies, doing partnership assessments, doing pipeline reviews, a lot of data that we're gathering today. And there hasn't really been sort of I would say a methodology that an industry adopted methodology that allows us to have a common language with other companies. So, I found that I was able to develop a methodology on my own, but I'd be speaking with someone across the table or another company, and they may have their own.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to build a partnership if you're not speaking that same language, having that same process, and having that same sort of rather than a scavenger hunt, it's it's more like a treasure map. I use that metaphor in the book. And so where you're going and every step along the way of how you're going to get there. And so check out the methodology. I'm always curious how folks will, kind of use it but this isn't the be all end all for everyone. This is not the answer to all your challenges in partnerships. It's going to give you a perspective, right? But I think the breakthrough, that we can all learn from and build on is, when you use a book today, you kind of read it. Well, Asher, you got to read the whole book.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Asher doesn't read books, so it's a compliment that he read this much of your book.
So audio version. How about that?
All good. You can call me. We can talk more about it. I'm fine with that too. We now know each other. So, but Kelly, keep them honest on that. But but when you look at the book and you reference it back and you say hey, there's the rise of AI and the ability to do many things we're already using in our daily partnership work to gather information, to analyze certain challenges, to what that partner may have done in the past. It's going to be able to, the power of the methodology in this book is going to be able to interact with it in a way that can be a tool for you that you can use when you're building partnerships. It's not about flipping through pages. It's about something that I'm going to be introducing when the book is launched later next month as a way to interact with the book in real time.
That's great.
And so this is the ability to put it to work for you, not just by flipping through pages, but being able to use the methodology to help you create ideas, to manage the challenges you're facing based on the thoughts and ideas in this book. And now the ideas in this book, not only are they copyrighted material, right, which I know we're going through a transition of how copyrighted material is used in AI, which is a whole other, podcast, but there's supplemental material that didn't get into this book because it would just be like a, War and Peace, book on a shelf. But there's supplemental material that will enable partnership professionals to actually do their job faster and add more value in kind of the next era with AI. And, it's not to fear it, it's to embrace it and to help lead it. And that's where I really see this as a starting point. I'm super excited, to figure out how to kind of get this in the hands of your audience. But at the same time, what that sort of, as I kind of drop the seeds, plant the seeds on this exciting new thing to come, I'd love to figure out with you both how to actually have a beta group to start to interact, with this new technology aspect of COELEVATE.
Did you build this, Richard, or did you have help? Was it you and Claude Enterprise? And
I'm coding.
More to come, Kelly.
Great.
More to come, Kelly.
Okay.
I'd love to give you and Asher a live demo of it.
I would love
that.
and walk you through it and see if it would work. That's the whole point. Is again, it's to bring in the aspects of what has worked, what hasn't worked, but base it around a framework and use it in a way that can help us do our jobs better. So that gives you I just wanted to share a little more of that. I'm sure your gears are kind of moving and
my
thinking
gears
of
are
what
turning. We'll see if I'm right when you launch, but
but it's coming very soon, and I'm excited to get it out there to everybody and hear their feedback.
That's great. So as we close, what's the launch date for the book, just so people can understand when they can grab it?
Yeah. So right now, I'm looking at the end of July for the book. We are making some final adjustments with some of the marketing pieces and some of the look and feel of the book. And then, looking for ways also to reach an audience to ensure that, we're making the most of it. So that's really the whole parts of, putting on my marketing hat with the folks that I've connected with to help me with the book launch. This is all a new set of, skills I'm learning and, as a new author. So, appreciate everyone who's helped me to realize this, because it's been quite a journey.
That's great. All right. Well, we could probably be talking forever, but I'm sure you have work, and Kelly definitely has meetings. So it's she has back-to-back meetings all day. I don't know how she does it, but thank you so much for spending time with us. And we look forward to getting a hand. Actually, I've read parts of the book just once again, but actually reading the whole thing and inviting you back on as you make your way through, just to understand hey, how does a new methodology that's you're trying to scale out, how does that motion actually work? And I think it'll be a great thing for the entire partnerships industry. We're excited.
Let's dig in. Thanks so much for the time. Great to meet you both. Asher, next time I'm in the Bay Area, let's connect.
Yeah, totally.
And riff on this a little bit more. And Kelly, if I'm over in your area, not as often.
You won't get up Philadelphia as often, but if you're here, let's get coffee. We'll talk partnerships.
Let's do it. And hey, again, thanks so much for the support and lovely conversation. Let's do it again.
Thanks for listening. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player or YouTube. Share it with a colleague, or tell us what you thought of it on LinkedIn. See you next time.